Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results, where we learn from experts how to use our presentation skills to move our listeners to take action. Whether we're presenting on stage or in a meeting or just to one significant person, there are hundreds of tools and strategies that we can use when we're presenting to get great results. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to go over to www.speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com and take the free assessment so that you can see where your strengths are and where maybe you could use a little bit of help. So today, I'm really excited to have my wonderful friend, Stephen Kirch. And let me move you up to where you're right next to me. There we go. So Stephen Kirch is a productivity consultant. And to be transparent, he's my productivity consultant and has been helping me a lot over the last year and a half, I think. Steve, I'm so glad you don't give up on me because I keep coming back and, well, maybe I made this much progress, but please. Anyway, let me read you the official introduction because he has a lot to say. So Steve Kirch, after retiring from a successful career as a manager and leader in high tech, he's Dr. Stephen Kirch, by the way, brings his passion for people and organizational effectiveness to his clients. He's been a certified facilitator of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for more than 20 years. And he uses that along with other tools to create custom solutions to his clients' productivity challenges. In addition, he's on the board of the Gratitude Network, which is a leadership development organization which works with social entrepreneurs around the world, helping these entrepreneurs grow their innovative companies to change the lives of children and youth. So there again is the international part of this podcast. We talk a lot about how presenting works and how we work in our global environment these days. Steve also has a passion for music, and he sings with 2 award-winning Bay Area barbershop choruses. He's appeared on stage in theatrical productions, and when not busy with music, you can find him on his bicycle or on the golf course. And then, Steve, the part of your bio that I love is I'm a daughter had a wonderful dad, and Steve says he's been married to his wife, Donna, for more than 38 years, and they have 2 wonderfully intelligent and talented daughters who are making their own way in the world. So yay for fathers and daughters. Thank you for putting that in there. So let's get started. Can you talk a little bit about why productivity and time management is such a big theme these days?
Well, everybody has so many things to do. Everybody's list of to-do items is longer than their arm. And people just get overwhelmed. There's stuff coming at you all the time. Emails, overwhelmed with emails, hundreds of emails coming at you. And how do you figure out what to do next? I find so many small business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives just overwhelmed with the list of things that they have to do and the different hats that they wear. The other piece that I've been talking about with some of my clients, Peter Drucker in the late 50s coined the term knowledge work. And that was, we went from factory work 100 years ago where you just went into work and you made your widget and you went home. Knowledge workers had to figure out not only what to do, but how to do it. Now, with the advent of these devices, which are so pervasive, our smartphones, we have the problem of what I'll call flexible work, which means we need to figure out not only what to do and how to do it, but when to do it, because we can work 24/7, and that's not good for anybody.
You know, I was just thinking that this whole thing about so many distractions coming, in some ways, it's kind of like the way mothers have had to cope for centuries. You know? And so how is this different from the distractions of raising a family, and you have to go out and gather the food and cook the food and make sure that the dinner's on the table and things like that? How is that different?
That's an interesting question. In some ways, it's not different, but I think for a lot of women, what's happened is they have to add the work piece to the family piece. And so in some senses, in modern families, that workload has balanced. We had we'll say, thousands of years ago, it was pretty clear the mother was the child rearer and the father was the hunter. And now we have balanced families, but people have responsibilities outside of just providing for their family. And so you have that sort of additional burden.
I also think that although it definitely takes brain power to figure things out, not everybody's going to put on an 8-course gourmet meal every night when you've also got a whole bunch of kids around and so forth. So that housework is not the same as, and childcare is as valuable, but not the same as the focused brain work that we're expected to do these days. And
that's certainly true.
When you think about Virginia Woolf, who said, "I need a room of my own," because I can just go and write. So now in this modern day, how do we manage? I'm a business owner, and I have a smartphone, and I confess I get distracted. If I look up something on Facebook, I might lose the next half hour because I keep wanting to go to the next thing. So how do we manage things so that we don't get distracted all the time?
Well, everybody's different. For some, the best solution is not to go on Facebook at all, or to set a timer so that you are pulled out and you say, okay, I'm going to go on Facebook, but I'm going to maximize my time there at 10 minutes or 15 minutes, so that you get in and get back out if you have a tendency to get lost. You have to anticipate where you're going to have problems, get to know yourself a little bit. I think this is something that you and I have been working on, and understand where your, let's call it biological prime time. Where is it that you're most creative? Where is it that you're best able to do those sorts of things? And where is it that you run into trouble? In the middle of the afternoon, when you want to, your brain is exhausted from the morning's activities. Maybe that's the time when it's okay if you get lost a little bit in Facebook, because, well, you're not going to be that productive anyway.
Well, actually, that sort of early afternoon, after lunch, 2:00, I try to sleep after lunch because I'm just so much better if I have a nap. And my partner doesn't do naps. And I'm just much better off if I have a nap, if I have that break. And I've learned from you to not expect myself to do serious thinking between, say, 1 and 4 in the afternoon. I will do other things. But if I have to do any serious thinking or writing, I'll sit down about 4 o'clock, and by then I've got a second wind. And you helped me. Actually, the best thing that you helped me with was to not beat myself up for not being able to be productive for 10 hours straight. And it's been a great gift that you've given me.
Well, I'm glad that's helpful. It really is all about progress, not perfection. Are we a little bit better than we were yesterday? Are we learning something? Are we knocking those things off of our list? Do we make a little bit of progress every day? You can't eat an elephant all at once, right? One bite at a time.
Right. So tell me, I know you've got like the 5 steps that you take people through in your PROtivity class. And talk a little bit about what PROtivity is and how this class works.
Yeah, so PROtivity, that's a word, actually, my daughter, who's a writer, she made it up for me. PROtivity are the activities that help you make profit, progress, avoid procrastination, and feel like a pro.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do in that system is understand, what are your goals? Those goals need to be inspiring. If you're not inspired to go off and do something, then what's life worth? Why are you here? You want to make sure that those goals that you have, that you're working toward in your business or in your life, are things that cause you to spring out of bed in the morning and say, boy, I can't wait to get going on that. So creating goals that are really inspiring. The second step is you want to make sure you're working on your own priorities. So many people, the first thing they do in the morning is they pick up this phone and they look at their email, and then they start working on it. And an hour later, they haven't done anything that matters to them. Sometimes it takes them to Facebook. Sometimes they're replying to somebody else's problem. But the thing that's really important here is, if you want to make progress toward your own goals, you have to work out of your priorities, not somebody else's. So don't be reactive. Don't be responding. Be proactive. And that's a very big thing out of the Covey 7 habits. Being proactive, active against on those things that you really need to work on. So that's step 2. Step 3 is, again, it's about progress, not perfection. How do you make progress every day? How do you select those things that matter to you, that will move the needle, that will move you forward toward your goals? And how do you manage those lists? I'm a big devotee of David Allen and his seminal work, Getting Things Done. Highly recommend that book. And for me, the David Allen system, he calls it the art of stress-free productivity. It's really about, how do you organize, how do you manage your myriad of things to do? What are your next actions? The 4th piece of this is how to deal with procrastination and distractions. We are constantly distracted. Facebook built a billion-dollar business, billions of dollars in business by keeping us distracted. That's their business model, is want to keep you moving from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. Just click here. And there's so many other things that come at us. How do you handle those distractions? How do you keep? I'm an ADD guy. I'm chasing squirrels all the time. How do you deal with that? How do you avoid procrastination? There are triggers for us that cause procrastination. You need to anticipate those and say, okay, well, what can I do to avoid this type of procrastination? This is why I'm procrastinating on this project. So I'm going to do this instead. And then finally, the fifth step is building habits for the long term. How do you change those habits? Our brain loves to do things in habits. It's much more efficient if we're habitual. We don't have to think about it. Getting in your car and driving, it's a habit. It's something how to do without thinking. I'm sure everybody here listening has had a time when they were driving and then 10 minutes later they realized they'd gotten where they wanted to go and they don't remember any of the last 10 minutes. And because our brains work that way. And because if we didn't, we would use up all of our energy in the brain. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to think. And so what you have to do, because our brain doesn't know the difference between a good habit and a bad habit, what you have to do is to figure out how to create new habits that are good ones, the ones that you like. So that's the PROtivity system.
That's really great. I love that. And I have taken this class, little bit of progress, way far from perfection, that's for sure. Couple of things you said just now. You said you're an ADD guy. So how come an ADD guy is teaching productivity?
Well, I think somebody said that we best teach what we need to learn.
Yeah.
And for me, when I was introduced to the Covey 7 Habits, 25 years ago now, it was transformational for me because it was a system that allowed me, first of all, as you pointed out, permission to fail.
Yes.
As long as I was making progress, it was okay. In fact, funny story, when I was learning, I was doing the train the trainer for the 7 Habits, becoming a facilitator. The woman who was teaching us said one day she literally ran into Dr. Covey in the hallway of the Covey Institute and was frustrated because she wasn't making very much progress in implementing the 7 Habits. And she asked Dr. Covey how well he does with the 7 Habits. And he said, I'm at about 35%. So that gives those of us that aren't doing real well a cause for celebration. Now you could argue, okay, his standards are probably a little higher because he wrote the book. But, if somebody who understands it that well is only doing 35%, and we look at him as a paragon of productivity, well, there's hope for the rest of us.
So I really love what you were saying about having permission to be human about this, if we will. I heard something the other day that reminded me that often where we are unhappy is not so much unhappy with, not so much paying attention to where we are, but if we focus on the gap between where we are and where we think we should be. And that made a lot of sense. So how can we get some help with the shoulds? Because I don't know, I'm really good at beating myself up for all the things that I should have accomplished today that didn't happen. How do we deal with the shoulds?
So I think the best way that I've found is to focus on the difference between where we are today and where we were yesterday. To be thankful and to celebrate those things that we did accomplish, and focus on what we have to be grateful for, what we have to be thankful for. We have so many gifts. Our gift of health, the gift of our minds, the gifts of our friends, our relationships, the opportunities that we have to to make a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And focus on the positive. That I think that's the biggest thing. Everybody is imperfect. Everybody has faults. You can't fix everything, but can you make it a little better and celebrate that?
So where is the balance between being gentle with yourself and saying, okay, well, I did this, that was fine, and what really needs to be done to move your business further or satisfy, if you've got an assignment from your manager and you've got to get your team going. Where's the balance there?
So here's where I think the part of the PROtivity system, and I know I'll admit that I've borrowed this from the Franklin Covey folks, that you need to pick out a couple of things each week to say, these are the important things. I need to make sure I get them done, and I'm going to put them on my calendar. I'm going to block out time to make sure that those things, it's only a couple of things that are really important for this week. Let's make sure that I make some progress on those things. And this is the Eisenhower matrix, or the time management matrix, as Covey calls it, where you have importance on one axis and urgency on the other. These things tend to be in what we call quadrant 2, the things that are important but not urgent. All the planning activities, these long-term goals, those are the things that we find the hardest to get scheduled. But if you look at your list of things to do and the things that will have the most impact on your business, on your life, on your role, you'll find that those things are in the important but not urgent.
It's really easy to go from urgent to urgent to urgent. And as you were saying earlier, it's really easy to go from other people's urgent, urgent, urgent. How do you plan time for thinking, for doing the long-range planning?
So my methodology is I take a little bit of time every Sunday evening as I'm getting ready to launch into the next week. And I look at my calendar. I look at the things that are really important on my to-do list. I look for spaces in my calendar. When I was working at corporate, I actually blocked, I had a couple of 2-hour blocks on my calendar every week where I knew I didn't have recurring meetings. I had a couple hours on Monday morning and a couple hours on Thursday morning that I blocked off. Mm-hmm. And it looked like I was in a meeting, that I already had something. So if somebody wanted to look at my calendar and try to find when I was free, they wouldn't see that those hours were available. And I would, on Sunday evening, I would schedule the things that I wanted to get accomplished in those 2-hour blocks.
Okay. So then that takes me to to-do lists. They're all those things that you really want to do, and you're going to get there. And I know you've talked about the someday maybe category. Explain a little bit about what that's about.
Yeah, this is a really interesting concept from David Allen and getting things done. I'm all about learning from other people. If you have an idea of something that you want to do, but you don't really have the time or energy right now to do it, the best way not to lose it as an idea is to put it on another list, but to put it on a list that you're not going to look at every day, because you don't want that project to go, oh, I really should be working on that. No, you shouldn't be working on it. You haven't made a commitment to do it yet. So put it on a list called someday maybe.
Okay, that's good. I confess I have a stack of papers that have traveled with me to Europe because I was going to finish them, and they're going to travel with me back to the US. And they're actually, for years I've been doing this. It's like the stacks of things I'm going to get to one of these days, and I really need to get to. It's just how to start. Yeah, that's a good reminder. I was looking at those stacks today saying, yes, I really was going to do that. And, you know,
and periodically you want to take a look at that someday maybe list and see if maybe there is one of those projects you want to pull onto your active project list.
I know one thing that's been helpful for me is because I know I'm a Olympic class procrastinator, is I will hire a student or somebody. There's actually a woman who lives in my apartment complex who will come in and help for $15 an hour. And we have a day once a month to look at the piles. And her job is to say, do you really need this? Do you need to keep this? And because there's someone else there, yes, I could do it for myself, but I won't. I know I won't. So it's worth it to hire somebody for 3 hours to just come, and maybe I can have that person actually finish that thing that's been bugging me. So you've mentioned briefly the Pomodoro Technique. Talk about Pomodoros. I mean, I love that, but what's a Pomodoro Technique?
So Pomodoro is the Italian word for tomato,
Mm-hmm.
and it was invented by, and I'm going to lose the guy's name, I want to say Cirillo, something like that, in Italian,
Mm-hmm.
Who basically said, you know, you can't focus forever, so let's focus for 25 minutes. And so you set your timer, the little kitchen timer.
Oh, the tomato-shaped timer?
The tomato-shaped timer that comes from Italy, that's right. That's why it's named the Pomodoro Technique. You set your timer for 25 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and you focus on one task for that 25 minutes. And when the timer goes off, you stop and you take a 5-minute break. What is amazing to me, everybody that has adopted this technique, what is amazing to them and to me when I do it is how much you can actually get done in 25 minutes of focused effort.
Yeah.
Now, for me, as somebody with ADD, I actually leave the timer ticking. You know, you can actually, there's an app on the phone. I don't actually have a tomato timer, but the little tick, 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 tick. When I get distracted, that ticking reminds me, no, I'm supposed to stay focused.
Oh,
so I use that ticking to help me stay focused in the moment in what I'm focused on.
That's really good, because I find if I use the timer on my phone, I use the timer on my phone all the time, but it's all too easy to just hit restart and keep going. And just hit restart, or just one swipe and it's gone. So it doesn't make enough of an impression to really make me pay attention and truly focus. So I like the idea of having it tick, tick, tick there. That's a great thing. The other thing, and actually what else I was going to ask you is, I know you're in the middle of the PROtivity course right now, and you've got
I am.
Students. What are they working on? Do you have any insights that you could share with us that has come up to be really useful, or things that have surprised you?
So we actually did, it's a relatively small class right now, and they really wanted to get at their email, which is something that we don't get to actually for a couple more weeks. And so we spent some time because they're overwhelmed with their email. How do you get your inbox to zero?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a 5-step method to get your inbox to zero and to keep it there. So we spent some time working on that, and I saw the one of the class members yesterday at a networking event, and she said, "Wow, in the last week, 2 times I've had my inbox to zero." And she had over 1,000 emails when we started. So it can be done, and it really feels good when you get your inbox to zero.
That actually reminds me of something you said earlier I was going to ask you about. You talked about setting goals, but say my goal is to finish my book. Finish my book is such a huge goal. What do I do after setting a goal?
That's a really good question. It's really crucial because when you have a thing on your to-do list that says finish book, your brain goes, I can't finish my book. That just is forever. But what you can do is ask yourself, what's the very next physical action I could take for this project? Again, stolen from David Allen. David Allen defines a project as anything that takes more than one action to complete. So it could be something as simple as getting new tires for your car. We don't think of that as a project, but it is a project because you have to decide where you're going to go. You have to make an appointment, and then you have to go, right? So there's 3 steps, all right? So what's the very next physical action if you're going to get new tires for your car is figure out where you're going to go. Now, maybe that takes you 2 seconds. I don't know. But then, okay, then the next thing is call the place and make an appointment. And then it winds up on your calendar and it winds up happening. Right? So projects like finish the book, ask yourself, don't put finish the book on your to-do list. Put what's the next action? Maybe it's revise chapter 1, or maybe it's do some research. Some very specific research that's for chapter 17 or whatever it is, right? Put down on your to-do list, on your next actions list, the very next physical action for that project. And do that for every project you have. Active people probably have something north of 50 projects that they're working on. But you can't do a project. You can only do actions. And each action is a step along the way toward that, completing that project.
So you have a goal, you have a strategy. You have a goal, you have the project that's going to get you to that goal. Is that right? Does that make sense?
You may have several projects that are going to get.
Okay.
You may have several projects that will take you toward your goal. Maybe your goal is making $200,000 next year. I don't know what your 2020 goals look like, or maybe it's $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
But you might have several different activities, several different vectors that your business takes. So you might have a project to work with this type of client, another project to work with this type of client, or another project that is I'm really going to get my CRM under control.
Mm-hmm.
So there can be a variety of projects. There may be, half a dozen, 10, even 15 projects associated with a particular goal. And some of them you haven't even thought of yet because you haven't gotten there. And that's okay. Or maybe you've thought of them and you had to put them on your someday maybe list because you don't have the bandwidth to handle all the projects right now. And that's okay too.
Okay. This is really fascinating, Steve, and I want to thank you so much for doing this. I want to add something that has nothing to do with your business or my business, but one of my favorite questions is, if you could be on stage, if you could be sharing the stage, speaking with somebody from history, who would it be?
I thought long and hard about that question. And I think for me, the person would be Gandhi.
Why? I mean, cool, great, but why?
The man had such an impact on all of those around him. The change, he was an inspiration to Martin Luther King Jr. He, I'll say, invented the nonviolent protest movement, right? All the nonviolent protest leaders look to him. He was such a thought leader. And so to understand how he could create such an incredible passion within the crowd, and yet they were always nonviolent. It was always peaceful. Such clearly an impassioned leader, but he led by example. He led by doing. And he was clearly one of the most focused individuals ever to have lived, at least in recent times.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Does that sort of thing, does that affect why you're part of the Gratitude Network? Absolutely.
The Gratitude Network was founded by a good friend of mine. He and I used to sing together. That's how we met, through barbershop. But he was a very successful venture capitalist and angel funder. Been on the board of probably 100 companies here in the Bay Area. And he decided it was time to give back. And so that's been inspiring to me, to help these mostly young entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs that are building businesses that are impacting kids around the world. We provide in the Gratitude Network a year of coaching and mentoring for these social entrepreneurs. There's no money involved or a Gratitude Network fellowship, but what you get is you get a seasoned executive coach to work with the founder, the CEO, the COO, depends on the size of the organization, but a key leader in that organization, help them with their leadership skills and help them grow the company.
That's great. And you said affecting children all over around the world. So how do you choose people? What are the what is it that makes them a good candidate for the Gratitude Network?
So several things. Obviously, they need to, their organization needs to be focused on helping children and youth. They need to be a growth stage company. We don't take startups in the Gratitude Network. So these are companies that have established that what they do works at least once, and they want to grow. We ask them how they might benefit from the year of fellowship. What is it that they're looking for? What is it that they expect their company to be like in 3 years? What's their dream for their company? And what is it that they need to do, or do they anticipate needing to do differently to get there? We actually just finished. We had 30 slots for 2020, and we had over 1,200 applications. Companies all over the world, from India, Sub-Saharan Africa, of course here in the U.S., South America, Southeast Asia, companies all over the world that value that sort of leadership development.
Great. Well, thank you, Steve. That was, it's good to know how you're doing all these things and the things you're doing to help people. I hope you're helping them be productive when you talk about that. So how can we learn more about what you do and how you help people?
So I think the easiest way is go to the website. My company is Business Culture Advantage. Modeled that after Peter Drucker's statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Doesn't matter how good your strategy is if you don't have the culture that can support it. So businesscultureadvantage.com. You can go there. You can learn about the PROtivity system there. You can also take a productivity checkup. If you want to learn about your own individual productivity, productivitycheckup.com is a place that you can go to take a quick little 5-minute quiz and understand how you're doing.
And so when people have taken that quiz, then what happens?
So when you take the quiz, when you submit the quiz, you get a free ebook. It's called Productivity Tips for the Entrepreneur. And honestly, these tips will apply even if you are an executive at a company or a worker that wants to improve your productivity. I think these tips work very well, no matter what kind of business you're in. Great.
Well, Steve, I want to thank you so much for being part of Speakers Who Get Results. You're certainly someone who gets results yourself, and you've helped me get better results, so I really appreciate that. This is Elizabeth Bachman, and this has been Speakers Who Get Results. I hope to see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.